Hey there, I got a super special and fascinating video for you guys today. I had the pleasure of going to meet Pam Dawling at the Twin Oaks community in Virginia. It's a commune, also known as an intentional community, and this one is about 100 people and it's existed for about 50 years, so it's a really special place. Also just extremely beautiful. Now, if you're not sure what that is, it's a bunch of people that live together and share all their basic resources. All their basic needs are met. They all put in equal amounts of work. So if you're answering the phone or working in the garden or cooking or fixing things, it's all the same. But what I want to share with you guys today is Pam's story and also a little bit about the community because they're kind of intertwined. She has lived there for almost 30 years and run the farm and garden there for about 20 years. And she's a very experienced farmer, but also an accomplished writer. And if you're not aware of who she is, she's written 2 books, one about market farming and the other one about hoop houses. So she's got a lot of cool stuff to share. And she talks a lot about growing food here, and it's just very different as a market gardener because we're focused on making profit and selling the produce that we grow. But for her, it's about feeding her community. So it's a very different approach and something that I just find very fascinating. So as I said before, there's a lot about farming, but there's also a lot of stuff about the community. And they do sell some products to make money for the community. They were doing making hammocks for a long time and selling them to Pier 1. And now they have a pretty serious tofu making operation. So she talks a little bit about that in this video. So much cool stuff in this one, guys. I know I had to give you a little bit of a intro here so you could understand, but hope you enjoy. Hey Pam, so thanks for having me out to your community here. I just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit if people don't know who you are, and tell us a little bit about the community here.
Okay, my name's Pam Dawling, and this is Twin Oaks community. We're an intentional community of about 100 people, and the community was founded in 1967, and I've been here 28 years I think now. And I've done a lot of my work in the vegetable gardens. Some of them you can see behind me.
So you've been here for quite a while now, and this is definitely your home. What have you been doing here for the last couple decades? You've just been running the gardens, and can you talk a little about the food production and how that works here in the community?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes, for a long time I was the manager of the vegetable gardens here, and I've retired from being the manager a couple of years ago. Our goal with the vegetable gardens is to feed the people who live here, the members of the community. So we don't actually sell any food, but the scale of growing here is like commercial vegetable production for market or CSA, something like that. Now I've retired from being the manager. I don't work so much in the gardens, but I still do enjoy gardening. And so I work some, I help out, I answer questions, and I do some work in the spring with the seedlings and transplant production. And I also work in the hoop house a couple of days a week.
And what was the motivation for coming to live here? Was this something that you were looking for, or?
Yes, I was living in Britain. I was living in smaller intentional communities that were kind of similar in being rural, income sharing, secular, without a leader, egalitarian. But I always, for a long time, I thought that I wanted to live in a bigger community of this type, and there weren't any in the UK. And so I thought I would come visit Twin Oaks and see if I really liked it, and see if I might want to live here. And I did make a 3-week visit way back before I moved here, and I found that I did like it here. And so when it came time for me to leave the community I was living in because it wasn't working out for me, I came here to check it out. And I have big worries about moving to a completely different continent a long way from home and leaving lots of good friends behind. But I really liked Twin Oaks, and I found that living with 100 people did suit me well, so I stayed, and here I am.
Were you immediately put into the role of managing the farm?
No, initially I just worked in the garden, and there was someone else was in charge, because there's differences in climate and crops and pests and diseases from gardening in the UK. So I had stuff to learn for sure. But when that manager left, there was another one for a couple of years, and then I and a friend of mine were left sort of co-managing. We were left holding the baby, as it were. And we became managers, although neither of us really wanted to be. And then a few years later, she left, and I was left solo manager. And I guess you could say I rose to the occasion. And part of what I did to learn more was to read a lot and go to conferences. And ultimately, that led to me writing my first book, Sustainable Market Farming, with all the research and all the records I had from our gardens here. And so I've sort of transitioned to spending more time writing and talking, giving presentations, and less time doing the physical work of growing vegetables.
So not everyone may know that you're an accomplished writer and or know like where you live or what you're up to now. So I think it's cool that I'm here to share that story.
Okay.
When you came here, were you thinking that this would be sort of your path with the farming and the gardening? Or did you have a background in that beforehand?
Yes, I'd done vegetable gardening on a smaller scale for 16 or 17 years in the UK. So I had the background, and I knew I really loved that work. And I was looking for a place where I could spend more time doing that work and less time doing all the other work that's necessary to keep a community together. I was happy to. I've given up cooking. I haven't cooked I've hardly cooked for 28 years. I don't really like cooking. I was okay at it, but I don't mind not cooking, for instance.
Okay.
I don't mind not doing taxes and repairing cars. I'm happy to leave those things and spend more time with the vegetables.
So is that part of the idea here is that everyone can focus on what they like to do and
Yeah.
everything else gets taken care of?
Yeah, because we're a large group of people can mostly people can choose the kinds of work they need to do. Everybody needs to wash dishes once a week, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But other than that, you can kind of choose your work areas, and you can either specialize or you can have a lot of different kinds of work to do.
And what sort of acreage are we talking about here for vegetable production?
It's about 3.5 acres.
Okay. And as someone like myself who struggles with balancing farming and content creation, how did you balance with the farming and farm managing with writing books and traveling and stuff like that for education's sake?
Well, with my first book, Sustainable Market Farming, I had for years been writing a once-a-month article for Growing for Market magazine. And at some point, the editor, Lynn Basinski, said to me, "Oh, you must have written a book by now." And it got me thinking. And I looked at the articles I'd written, and I said, well, I've written half a book. And so I decided to go ahead and try and write the whole book. And I was still very, very busy managing the garden at that time. So I used to do 2 hours a day. I would work in the garden in the morning, and then after lunch I would spend an hour setting up the irrigation and writing down anything from the morning, record keeping, that kind of thing. And then I would jump into the office and I would work on the book from 2 till 4, and then I would go back outside and do transplanting or whatever else I needed to do. So I was very, very focused, and that got me through writing the first book. But by the time I came to write my second book, The Year-Round Hoop House, I was retiring from the garden managership, so I had more time to write that book. It was more open-ended.
Cool. I recommend people check out those books, and I'll leave a link in the description below for you guys to check those out if people want to see them. But what I want to do today is I just want to go look around the farm a little bit. There's a lot of cool things going on here, not just in terms of farming, but the community. So if you show me around a little bit, that'll be cool.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Yeah.
All right, so it's late November right now, and you guys are growing most of the food for your community here. What do we have growing right now?
Okay, so what we've got out here in the garden, we've got lots of greens right now, lots of kale, collards, these Asian greens, We've got spinach, it's under row cover. We've got lots of leeks. I introduced leeks to Twin Oaks. I was laughed at first, but now people really like leeks. We just planted the garlic, and that will be coming up above ground. Here it will be above ground for the winter. We'll mulch over the beds, and then the garlic shoots will pop up through the mulch. We've also got a lot of vegetables that are either frozen or pickled or canned or dried. We have a food processing crew that deals with surplus. So sometimes when you look at our gardens, you think, why do they need so much broccoli, for instance? It's because we're going to freeze a lot of broccoli for the off-season.
All right, so 3.5 acres or so of vegetable production, and we have a field here. What's usually growing out here during the season?
Well, we do rotate our crops around this garden and the other ones, but this year we've had peppers, tomatoes, melons. Some of the sweet corn was up here. Early on there was garlic. It varies, it depends on the year and the crop rotation plan. But we have like 5 different plots here, and we move the crops around each year. And then further down we have the perennial rhubarb, grapes, and blueberries.
Cool. And then also the greenhouse in the back here, so we're gonna go check that out.
Right, let's do that.
A big part of the production here is this tunnel, and I know that's been something that you've really specialized in as well with writing your book, and you've gotten a lot of experience here. So can you talk a little bit about this greenhouse and how you guys use it?
Sure, yes. So this is a 30 feet by 96 feet, and in the winter we're growing mostly greens, but also some turnips and some radishes, and the greens are a mix of salad crops and cooking greens, and things grow so well inside the hoop house. They grow faster, and the quality is much nicer than if grown outside because they're not weather beaten. And so we were able to provide a lot of food for our 100 people, and we even one year we had ice on the ground or frozen ground for a month, which is really unusual in central Virginia, but it did happen and it may happen again. And the only place we could harvest was in here, and we were able to keep everybody going with fresh salads and fresh greens for a month. Although things were pretty picked over by the end of the month, and we were glad to be able to go back outside and get some more kale and spinach and so on.
But having that opportunity to feed fresh greens in the wintertime is just unbelievable.
Right, yeah.
Just really great for everyone's morale and health and everything.
Everything, yeah. And really the winter greens was the reason that we wanted to put up the hoop house in the first place. We do grow in here year round. Well, I've written the book about it, but we really made the greens our main focus, our main reason for having the hoop house.
And these aren't like full rows of anything. You have a lot of diversity in here too.
We do, yeah. We've sort of fine-tuned it over the years to give us the sort of balance and quantities and ratios of things that we need. So it's a mixture of lettuce and spinach and Asian greens and kale, and then the turnips and the radishes.
So this tunnel is really a no-till strategy.
Yeah.
And what was the decision, how did you guys decide upon that in the tunnel?
We wanted to try it out on a small scale, a manageable scale, to see how well we could do if we didn't till, or if it was too much work. And also we just didn't want to be running our walk-behind rototiller inside a structure, breathing in the fumes and having them fall on the food.
What a concept, right?
Yeah, right. We wanted clean food and clean lungs. So we decided to try no-till, and it worked very well. We later on developed a technique of using a broad fork once a year before the winter crops, because we realized that the soil was slumping down. And we discovered this because we knew we were kind of walking on the edges of the beds sometimes accidentally or sometimes carelessly. And we noticed with our spinach that the edge rows were much smaller than the rows in the middle of the bed. And so we decided the next winter we would go around all the edges of the beds with a digging fork, just loosening it up. And what we noticed that winter was that the edge rows grew bigger than the rows in the middle. So we decided we really needed to put more air into the soil once a year, And so we just do that the once a year, and it works well for us, and I think the plants are better for it.
Okay, and that's not a big commitment once a year to come through in Broad Fork.
No, it's not a big. No, it takes time.
Right.
But, yeah, just
okay.
once a year.
And how's the soil looking for you guys? I know you guys add a lot of your own compost too, but
yeah,
the soil's been working for you guys generally?
Yeah, another thing we discovered was salt buildup. We had to deal with salt buildup.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I was unaware of it actually for a while. It's a problem in hoop houses because they're covered and it doesn't rain. We're using just drip irrigation, and so the water from the drip irrigation goes down into the soil, and then the plants use it, and because of the extra warmth, the water is evaporating from any bare soil you do have, and it's leaving all the salts on the surface. And so after a while, that's not healthy for your plants. You can have trouble with seed germination, you can have trouble with plant growth. And I was unaware of it, and we were showing a group of experienced growers around in here one time, and somebody said to me, "Ooh, what are you going to do, or what are you doing about the salt buildup?" And I went, "What?" I really didn't know about it until that point. And so once we'd been informed about it, I could see it. The soil was kind of white on the surface. And so what we do now is twice a year, we do a salt wash down. We use a lawn sprinkler, a sort of rectangular, does a rectangular water pattern. And we run it for 2 hours at each spot. So we mark with flags down the length of the hoop house 4 spots. We come in, we move all the things out of the way that we don't want to get wet. We run it for 2 hours in one spot. We move it to the next spot for 2 hours. And then the next day we work our way back. So each place gets 4 hours of watering like this twice a year. I did a calculation that showed it maybe wasn't quite enough and a bit more would be good. But we don't want to be doing the overhead watering when we've got tomato plants and cucumber plants and so on in here, and we don't want to be doing it in the middle of the winter when it's really, really cold, and so we do it in the spring and in the fall.
Okay, silly question, but aren't the salts still in that water that you're spraying, like to rinse it down?
Well, they're not concentrated. In the water that we're spraying, they're not concentrated.
Okay.
The problem is when they get concentrated by being left on near the surface of the soil.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is wash those salts back deep down in the soil where they came from.
Gotcha. So let's talk about crop selection and crop planting. I know it's super different for you than for other farmers or market gardeners because you're not growing for profit, you're growing to feed your community. So can you talk a little bit about those decisions?
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is feed the people here all year round, and so we need to choose the crops that the people are going to eat, and that some we can process for later, and whatever it is we need to eat fresh, and we're not focused on what the crop would sell at. So there's some things that we just don't grow, like microgreens, baby ginger, strawberries. We've given up on those things, given up on strawberries. We've never grown microgreens as
an example.
Yeah, because although they fetch really nice prices at the restaurants and they're fun and everything, there's not a lot of food value in a tray of microgreens compared to a cart full of cabbages or something. So we're much more focused on the food value of the crops that we're growing. So sometimes we have to give up the space. For instance, we used to grow ginger, a whole bed of ginger, in the hoop house, and we gave that up in favor of growing some more food crops.
Okay, so what are some of the crops that you guys like to grow over the course of the year? Is it just all over the place so you can have a diversity for everybody here? Yeah,
we definitely want a diversity, yeah. We always like to have salad. We always like to have some cooking greens all year round. We certainly like to have tomatoes and peppers, melons, yeah, all kinds of things. We've given up trying on onions, though. That's another crop that we don't do anymore. It's tricky growing onions here, and our cooks just didn't want to deal with the kind of onions that will grow in this location. They just were used to dealing with the great big round hard northern onions, and so that's what they want. So we don't grow onions anymore.
Okay, but you said before that you're doing some row cropping for things like potatoes and some other, like sweet corn.
Potatoes, sweet corn, sweet potatoes. Yes, lots of broccoli. We used to grow winter squash in the vegetable garden, but we don't do that now because our seed growing group does that as a seed crop over on a different part of our land. And because to get squash seeds, you've got to grow mature squash. So we can get 2 harvests from one plant that way.
So you have a separate seed operation too?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
what does that look like?
It's about, it's an area where they grow crops for seeds to sell, and so they are not at all focused on the food except as a byproduct. Like there's some things like the squash and peppers where you get the seeds from the ripe plant, and if you just cut it in a certain way, you still get the part that you eat. So some crops like that, but also lots of other vegetable crops.
And are you using a lot of the seeds from that production for the farm here?
Mostly they're grown for sale because they're grown in large quantities, fairly large quantities. It's still small scale seed growing, but if you think about the amount of cabbage seed we might need, it's not very much for the number of cabbages we want to grow. But to produce that tiny amount of seed, it makes more sense for one seed grower to grow lots of cabbage seed and another seed grower to grow lots of broccoli seed, for instance. And then so they sell to Southern Exposure, they sell to Fedco, Baker Creek, High Mowing, different small seed companies. And then we buy our seeds from Southern Exposure and Fedco and Johnny's mostly.
All right, cool. I know people watching this are probably very familiar with those companies. And
yeah, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
When Twin Oaks started in 1967, we originally did kind of odd jobs and ran a construction company to bring in the money. And then we started the hammock making business, and we made these rope hammocks. We make them in lots of different colors now. We used to sell lots. We used to sell lots more, but Pier 1 company stopped selling hammocks. So now our main business is making tofu, but we also still have the hammocks. And so people can come in here any time of day or night and make a hammock or two.
So we're inside the tofu operation here, and I know we don't want to tromp through here because this is a food production area, but can you talk a little bit about what's going on in here?
Yeah. We make tofu at the moment about 4 days a week, and some of it is in 1 pound packs and that go to stores, and some of it is in bigger packs for restaurants and so on. And we buy organic soybeans that are grown in the bioregion, usually in Virginia, and they're in a big bin outside. And so the person starting the day will put some soybeans in to soak overnight, and then we'll start cooking them in the morning, and then process them and make the tofu, and then package it in this machine to the side of us. And we do different flavors. We do the plain, the firm tofu. We do one with herbs in it. Different people like different kinds. Most of the community does some work in the tofu business.
How long has that been a part of the community?
About 25 years, probably.
Okay. And originally, was it started because someone knew about this, or was this?
Yeah, a person joined who had run a very, very small scale tofu making business, and he brought the business with him, and we sort of grew it from there.
Okay, I figured there'd be some sort of specialized knowledge that someone comes into the community with.
Yeah, and people have been to visit other tofu manufacturing businesses and learned that way as well.
Okay, and where does this wind up going to? Can people find this locally?
Well, all up and down the East Coast anyway, yeah. Probably doesn't go as widely as your video will go.
What's the brand that it gets?
It's Twin Oaks.
Twin Oaks, okay.
Twin Oaks tofu, yeah.
So we're in the dining area here. Can you just talk a little bit about what's going on here and some of the things that sort of tie the community together here?
Yeah. This is a bit a communication center as well as a dining area. So we have lunch here at 12 every day and dinner at 6. And people can, if they choose, come and get food provided by our cooks. There's also a place where we leave messages for each other, notices for anybody that needs to find out what's going on. It's where we have a lounge with magazines and mailboxes. Everybody gets a mailbox where any actual mail, letters in envelopes, gets delivered once a day. And also people can store their gloves or whatever. It's a fairly good-sized mailbox. We have a dining room with tables and chairs where people can sit down. We also have picnic tables outside for people that like to eat outside, which is possible most of the year.
So in a world of super digital stuff, I just love how this is how you guys pass a lot of messages along to each other.
Right.
You guys just post, things that you need to communicate with on just pieces of paper, and people come in here twice a day at least, so
Usually, yeah.
it's a good way for you guys to communicate this stuff.
Right, it works pretty well. I mean, we do email each other, but not everybody checks their email very often, and sometimes it isn't working out here in rural Virginia. But if you want to make a little announcement, you can use the board that's behind me. Or if you, sometimes we say, if you want something, if there's something you want, before you go and buy it, just ask if anyone else has one that they don't need anymore. And that works really nicely. People have handed over camping gear and embroidery floss and all manner of things to help you find a book. All kind of messages get put there. We also have, if you want to just write to one person, we have a place to do that as well.
So I'm sure there's a constant in and out of members here, right? And so are you guys looking for new members, or what does that process look like?
Right. We are looking for new members at the moment, and most of the people who find out about us and ask to visit mostly read about us online. Twin Oaks has a website. You can go there and you can read about us a bit, and then you write a letter to the visitor program, and you get invited for a 3-week visit. We do the visits in blocks. We have a group for 3 weeks, and then we have a week without any visitors, and then we have another group every month like that. And during the visit, the visitors join in our work for some of the time, half the time maybe, and then they also get to sit down with particular members and hear about a certain aspect of living here. And if they like what they see, then they can ask for an interview with a membership team, and then after they leave, we're all given a little input slips to write down whether we think they'd make a good member or not. And if they're selected, then they can come here.
So obviously there's a lot of work to be done on the community here. So you're not just looking for farmers, you're looking for people that want to participate in lots of different things.
That's true, yes. A lot of our work is nothing to do with farming. We like to have people to cook our dinners and fix our cars and answer our phones and take care of children and all kinds of work here. And it all counts as equally valuable work.
I think that's really important to have that value in your community.
Yeah.
And so not just vegetable farming, but you guys also have a lot of different other operations.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for ourselves, we have the dairy program, which has meat as a byproduct, but provides all the milk and yogurt and cheeses that we need. We also have some poultry. We have a couple of small farming businesses, one which grows seeds for sale and one which grows cut flowers for sale at the farmers market in Charlottesville.
And then you also have your tofu operation.
Oh, that is kind of, that's not, I don't think of that as farming because we don't grow those soybeans,
Sure.
But it is farming related, yes, it's food related.
And compost making.
Yes, okay. All those things.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on here, Pam.
There's lots going on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me today. It's been a pleasure, not just meeting you, but showing me around and really inviting me into your world. So
yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome.
Nice
I will leave links down in the description for everything I can think of related to what you guys have going on here.
Okay.
So
sounds great.
Thanks so much, Pam.
Thank you.